Hello, everyone.
Hey.
We are back telling lies.
It is currently Sunday at 5:49 a.m.
Yes, and we are finally starting our long-anticipated world record speed run of Solitaire within Telling Lies.
Very, very elite category.
Okay, for real, it's been a little while since we finished playing Telling Lies. And
yeah, a few weeks.
Yeah, and we've kind of at least I've been thinking about it a lot, and this is not something we're going to do for every game, but I kind of wanted to do like a sort of like a review and discussion of the game now that we've played it and have had some time to reflect on it. Because it's interesting, because it's one of those games where it's obviously a very good game, but there's lots of things about it that frustrate me and are kind of like poking in the back of my mind. I don't know how you feel about it, Dan. What do you think?
I think it's affecting you more than it's affecting me. I mean, I do acknowledge that there are issues with the game that were in particular not present in its predecessor. And yeah. I think maybe that's probably where most of this frustration comes from, because like the issues you're having might be the types where you're like, but you had it already. You did this once before. Like you got it right once. Why aren't you doing it again?
Well, it's not even like, why aren't you doing it again? It's just like, the way you did it before, you seem like you avoided all of the possible pitfalls of doing this, and now you fell into them. Well, okay. Well, first of all, let's start off with some positives, because it is a very good game. I did want to kind of start off the discussion by just asking you very upfront, like at present time, given your thoughts on the game and how you feel about it, would you recommend it to someone else to play? Oh, I think everyone who can play it should play it. They should also play Her Story, because I think it's one of those. So that has not changed. No, because it's one of those games where I think it's heavily flawed. I think there's things that could. It's not just like we improve a few things here and there and it'll be better. It's like you have to kind of rewrite it in order to fix the issues with it. But I will also say, like, there are very few things out there that are like this. And I think it's sort of a disservice to say, oh, just because it's wrong in these ways, don't play it. It's like, no, you really should play it and decide for yourself. And I given the reviews out there, I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority. Like, I don't think most people think about this game the same way I'm thinking about it. And that's fine.
I'd say that's fair to say.
Yeah, that's fine. Because, like, there are some really good things about it. Like, for example, especially when you compare it to, like, Her Story, like, the acting in Her Story was fine. But like the acting in this game is pretty excellent. Like I delved in a little deeper as to the way they recorded it. It turns out like Sam Barlow and his team like rented a giant warehouse and filled it with sets, and all the conversations actually were happening live. So
that, you know what, that provides the most authentic experience by far. So I'm really glad they did that.
Yeah. So like those were like, there are videos online where people put them side to side and they match up exactly, and it's because those are the actual conversations they were having. It wasn't just some sort of weird thing.
Okay, good. I'm glad for that, actually.
Yeah, and
I'm very, very happy to hear that.
And it's like, you know, even with that sort of setup, it's like a really difficult thing to act well. Like, you know, you're acting like to a camera. You don't have the person physically in the set to kind of like jive off of, and it's like it's a really difficult thing for an actor to do. So like, especially with like Logan Marshall Green and like I think her name's Alexandra Shep. Yeah, she's they did a really good job. The setup itself is also super ambitious, right? Like Her Story, like conceptually, you can see for yourself how it's made just from the way it's set up. It's like, oh, it's one person who was being interviewed in maybe 2 different interrogation rooms, and it's like that's the type of setup you can imagine even yourself kind of like doing, right? And then you get to Telling Lies, and you're like, wow, this is really ambitious. The type of setup you've been doing here with the type of acting that needs to be done, it's like really impressive the way you set it all up. So it's like,
Right, and you're just talking about the logistics of making it,
yeah,
right?
yeah, the logistics of making this game. Like, it's impressive what they managed to do. So,
Yes.
but then it's interesting. Like, they made it like a complete. It's like, on the face value, the game is really similar to Her Story, right? Because it's like, okay, you don't know why you're here, but you do know that by the time you get control, you're given this database that you need to search through, and you can only search through when you search for a term, you only see the 5 most recent videos, or not recent, the latest videos, right? Like the oldest ones in chronological order. So if something's newer than that, it'll go beyond those 5 videos. So that's your hook. Your hook is...
I actually didn't remember what decided which 5 you get shown, so that's good to know.
Yeah, it's like it'll start with the oldest, and if it goes beyond 5, it won't show it. So that's like the hook of the game. It's like you're trying... That's why you can't just get to the end right away, right? You have to find the exact term that can only show up in the end, like, which in this case was water is life. The point of comparison between the two games, it tells you off the bat how it's different narratively, though. So, do you remember that much about Her Story or the way it started?
Not exactly how it started.
So Her Story, like Her Story didn't have like all that video leading up to it. Her Story had it just started at the computer screen, and then you have the database open like this, and then the first word it had was murder. In fact, okay, so nothing. That's interesting. See, they intentionally have nothing show up for murder, but in Telling Lies, it started off with BR, which I assume now is bridge, and then it goes to love, right? So that means you already get some of what the character's motivations are just from those search terms. Like in Her Story, she's trying to unravel something about a murder, and it's pretty direct. Whereas in Telling Lies, now that we know who Karen is like one of the people that worked with David, right? And she appears to have been like his handler or something to that effect. So if that's the case, maybe she looked for bridge at first because it's like the thing she wants to expose, right? But then she goes, that's not what I want to look for. I want to look for maybe what I think is the people he was having affairs with. The games are already framed differently that way. And it's weird because the perspective of the player ends up aligning more closely with the protagonist's perspective in Her Story than it does in Telling Lies. You know what I mean? Like when you're playing Her Story, you come in and you don't know what's going on, and that's the same thing for the character in Her Story. When she sits down, she doesn't know what to look for, right? Whereas in Telling Lies, the premise is you're playing Karen, right? Well, Karen should know exactly what she should be looking for. So it's weird that she has to contend with this idea of not the player not understanding what's going on doesn't line up with what Karen is actually thinking, right?
Yes.
So it's like there's already a disconnect there. I think that sort of snowballs from there, in that you don't feel like the game's objective is the player's objective. You know what I mean?
On one hand, yes, she's here to expose what actually happened with the supposed, I guess, the bridge explosion. Is that what he ended up doing with those explosives? Is that why she searches for bridge first?
Yeah, I think initially we thought he might have been somewhere else and there was a plane going overhead, but I think that sound was actually a car driving over the bridge. Because I can't think of anything else of why would he drive a boat to blow up something. Like they were talking about blowing up the bridge.
Do me a favor. What's the actual desktop wallpaper behind all this?
Oh. You're right. Let me take a look.
Is there a bridge?
It is indeed a bridge.
Isn't that just the Golden Gate?
Well, if the credits line up, it's a bridge or something else.
Wait, no, Golden Gate is way more like towers and stuff.
Yeah, also this is clearly not San Francisco.
Yeah. Never mind.
Yeah.
But it is a bridge.
Yeah.
And
this is presumably the bridge she blew up.
Maybe. You know what? I'm starting to think it like this game feels more like a Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah.
Than her story does, because like as you're playing it, you're having fun, you know, you're getting through mysteries and stuff, and then you're done. Once you get through it all, you lay out all the pieces and you're looking at them, it's like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I was going to make I was right about to make the comparison to Memento. Like,
okay, there you go.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, because if you look, Roger Ebert had a really good review for Memento. I think Memento's fine. It's not one of my favorite movies, but I think it's an interesting idea for a movie. But I think Roger Ebert is absolutely correct when he says, Memento is best enjoyed while you're confused. Because when you watch it a second or third time and you understand what's going on, it stops being an interesting movie. And I think that's exactly the same for her story. Like, I was also going to compare it to, like, Hereditary. Have you seen Hereditary?
Her story or Telling Lies?
Oh, sorry, Telling Lies, sorry.
You know what? But I would even argue that would hold true for her story.
Well, see, that's the thing. For her story, I think the actual story of her story, if you understand fully what's going on, is interesting. Whereas the actual story of Telling Lies, when you know what's going on, actually isn't very interesting at all. It's actually full of tropes and it's kind of straightforward.
Well, okay, my like when I think back to her story and like how that narrative played out, or like when you extract the actual plot of her story, when you organize all the events in order and everything, you know, it gets pretty wacky. The actual events of the story.
Oh yeah, it gets crazy.
But my point being that once you know all that, as fun and crazy as it is, like you don't really need to see it again. You don't really need to play it again.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's sort of the format of the games themselves. But I mean, like, the story itself is interesting. Like, the story that someone is apprehended out of suspicion by the police for having killed her husband, and it turns out it may not have been her, it may have been a twin, but also the twin may not be real, and then it turns out the person who is looking for this information is her daughter. Like, all of that is super interesting, you know? But then in Telling Lies, what is...
There's tropes for that too.
There are tropes, don't get me wrong, but I feel like the tropes are like played around with more. It's like, it's not just saying, here's the trope. Whereas when Telling Lies, it's like the women especially are nothing but tropes. I am the nagging wife. I am the manic pixie dream girl. I am the hooker who will stab you in the back after everything is over. And it's like the game...
Well, at least you didn't have a heart of gold.
Yeah, well, yeah. But, you know, but it's like... But especially like Maxine, she has nothing going on. Like, you could remove Maxine from the game and the game barely would change, like, as like a story. And that I think already is a massive weak point. Like, Ava is obviously crucial, and the wife offers an interesting perspective. What was her name? Emma? Yeah, Emma. Mm-hmm. Emma offers an interesting perspective, but Emma's almost like, she reminds me of Skylar from Breaking Bad, which is like one of the weakest points of... I love Breaking Bad. It's one of my favorite shows ever made, but it's like one of the weakest points of Breaking Bad is that they never wrote the women characters very well. They only wrote them as obstacles. And Emma's kind of just an obstacle. And Ava is just like basically David's dream girl. Like, they're not written very interestingly other than what their tropes are. And then once you know what the setup is, of course she's going to get pregnant. Of course she's going to have a kid. Of course Emma's going to have an affair with her. Of course Maxine is going to stab him in the back. Like, none of it is interesting or unpredictable. Whereas with the main character in her story, you're like, holy shit, like, none of this is normal. Like, all of this is crazy and weird. And like, it begins with the trope of a, like, you know, it's a trope for like a woman.
When you say main character in regards to her story, you're talking about who you play or the lady in the videos?
The lady in the video, not the daughter. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, it's crazy. Like, it starts off tropey with like, oh, she's just a crazy woman who killed her husband, but then it gets into the realm of like insanity. Like it stops being like just a regular story, and especially because it leaves you with the question at the end of, was any of it real that she's saying, or is she just saying, like she tells you herself, you don't have to believe me based on what you know. I could be making all of this up, you know?
Right. And you know what? I think what it boils down to is that her story did a much better job of keeping you confused.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
that's kind of what it is. Like, because once you have the major pieces of the telling lies narrative together, everything unfolds in a way that makes reasonable, mundane sense.
Yeah, and it's and all the details, everything else is just details. Like the details don't add anything new to what's going on. Like, I understand why it was written that way. You had talked about it earlier. The reason why it's written this way is because there's 4 characters, and he's trying to juggle these 4 characters, right? And like make it so that as you go through their story, you can't just have one person give away the rest of what they're doing. So they all kind of need to be a bit disconnected. But as a result, they all have these lines, like these storylines where I think really interesting happens with them. Like especially Maxine, which is ironic because the game we thought she was the most interesting character. It's like she was by far the least interesting character.
Yeah, you know what? That was kind of a negative aspect of our experience playing it, because I think we ended up seeing a lot of her videos because
I think we
just wanted to figure out more stuff.
Yeah, I think part of it was we're like, is there more with her? Let's see.
And actually, I don't know what the game counted as us like watching for her, because it's like, is it based off of queries that are directly related to her aliases? Or is it,
I don't know exactly what that entails either. But
yeah, so I was a little confused at the end. It's like, hey, you spent a lot of time looking at her. It's like, did we really?
Yeah.
And that was kind of weird.
Yeah. And like, it didn't help that mechanically the game didn't play it the right way. Like, okay, like again, we're going back to her story. But like her story, okay, its interface was clunky in many of the same ways that telling lies is, but there's a few ways you can explain that. Like, when you look at the interface in her story, it looks like a fucking Windows 95 machine, right? So you're thinking, okay, maybe it's like this because it's an older system, things are fucked up, etc., right?
Right.
So that's why you can only play 5 videos at a time. But this is supposed to be a modern NSA surveillance thing. Why am I only allowed to watch 5 videos at a time? That seems really stupid for the NSA to have that built-in limitation. On top of that, it's just mechanical things about the way the game plays. Like the notepad kept fucking up for us, right? And that could probably be because I was playing in UHD, so I can give that a pass. But like other stuff, like you got annoyed. We both got annoyed that we had to rewind all the way back to the beginning to play videos.
Well, that was my argument for why the game may not intend for us to do that necessarily.
But
or rather they were just trying, or it might have been that they wanted people to have to make the decision, like, do I seriously want to rewind through however many minutes of this?
I don't think that's very well designed if that's the way that's working.
Well, that was my issue with it. Like, either set it up like her story to only play a certain bit of the clip and stop, or give us a skip to the front.
Yeah, like the conceit in her story was supposed to be that because of the glitch in the system, you only see her responses to questions, right? So they could have done something similar here.
It might have been, well, okay, I'm really reaching here, but it might have been that they wanted. Are you able to turn subtitles off, like entirely?
Yes, you can go in here.
But they're on by default.
They're on by default.
Okay, so if they're on by default,
and the game's like the search engine is designed to use subtitles. Like, let me show you.
Right. You're able to highlight a subtitle to search for a term.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just trying to establish that they intend for the subtitles to be there, because if they intend for subtitles to be there and you're rewinding and you're seeing every line of dialogue that they are saying in reverse, for certain players, not us, I don't think this applies to us, but I think there's certain players out there who would only be looking for certain terms in the rewind, and if they see something that jumps out at them, is like, oh yeah, I was looking for that, like I'm looking for these pieces, they could stop right there. And if you have just a skip to the front button, like you're not given that opportunity. But me being who I am, I kind of hate it. So, well, I think there are people out there who do appreciate being able to see every piece of text as it goes backwards. But having a choice is good.
Well, having a go to the front of the video button wouldn't have changed that. You could still rewind and fast forward if you wanted to. Like, I think it's just like one of those weird. It's one of the things I think they just overlooked, and they didn't really like, because of the nature of it being like a lower budget game. I just don't think they like QC'd it that deeply. Because like another thing that bothered me is that like,
no. This has to be a design decision. There is no like, I refuse to believe that they couldn't program.
There's other things that are design decisions that I don't agree with. Like, why does every video have to forcibly be played full screen? Why is there no progress bar? Like, because it's full screen, I can't use the notepad while I'm watching videos. What's the point of the notepad then? It makes me want to use a physical notepad or call out things to you, like we did. It's like there's things that fight against the game's own mechanics, and I feel like it's because it wasn't like QC'd in that way.
Like, I do want to. I would find it very remiss of them to not have done QA to the point where they like, because anyone playing this game for like even half an hour will very quickly, so long as they know that there's a rewind function, will very quickly realize like a skip to the beginning button would be great. Yeah, you only need to look through 2 damn videos for you to get that feeling.
Yeah, like the very first 2 videos, like when you type in love, like the very first, like these 2 videos right here start with,
you're nearly at the end.
Yeah, and you want to rewind almost 4 minutes or past 4 minutes, and it's like, I just, you're right.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, anyone playing this game like for real will very quickly want that button. Which makes me think that they must have intentionally denied us that button.
Well, then what value is there in denying it?
Ask Sam Barlow. He's on Twitter.
Maybe we could. I don't know. I don't want to harp on that point too much. I don't know, because I don't know why they did it. And maybe it worked for someone else, but didn't work for us. Another thing is that, like, those prologues, they're not great. And I don't know... Oh, that's it. I said that. That's the same mistake I made before. The epilogues.
Oh, right.
Those epilogues are not great.
I have not seen any of. I did not go looking for the others at all.
So basically, just to summarize, we saw the Maxine one. She just moves on with her life. She says she's gonna go on to do these things. With the.
Like get back into real estate or something, or
she was
no. She sold her house or something.
Yeah, she sold the house, and she was like, she thinks about getting back into real estate, but she's not going to. And then she's gonna start her own cam agency, and then eventually she's gonna retire and write novels about strong female leads. And then the other 2 are just Emma moves on with her life. I don't remember the exact, because I watched them like a while back. I don't remember them directly, but like Emma moves on with her life, and also Ava just moves on with her life, raising her daughter. That's it. And it's just like, what did these epilogues serve? And it's like, why do we only see one person's epilogue? I think part of my frustration is that the ending of like the ending of Telling Lies, no matter which ending you get, falls kind of flat. Like there's nothing profound about the way it ends. Characters just move on. Fuck David, I guess. Like, but then...
Well, he's dead.
Yeah, fuck him. He's dead. But then, like, the ending of her story is a fucking crazy twist. And, like, it changes the nature of what you were doing. Like, I wasn't expecting another, like, M. Night Shyamalan-esque twist in Telling Lies. Like, that would have been cool.
Twist.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been cool, but it's not something that necessarily needed to happen, but I wanted something more than just everyone forgot about David. Like,
well, yeah, like admittedly, I was like waiting for a shoe to drop because, you know, like every time, every lead and like piece we were picking up, especially near the beginning, was like, oh God, what if that's not even true? Like, like we were conditioned by having played her story to like go pretty fantastical with our speculation, and that ended up being being to the game's detriment. Like having already gone through a game that was crazier, it did feel mundane by comparison.
But I think it's also not an what's it called?
Well, something fundamental about this game, I think, is that it fancies its own characters to be interesting to you.
Yeah, it wants to be a character study.
Yeah, and like I think you are making the argument that it's not interesting, but I think the game believes it's like it believed it was.
Yeah, and that could be why it is the way it is. Because
and that's that's the only way it could be the way it is.
Yeah, I think, and that's fundamentally the problem. It's that like
something that I personally like. I even called it right as we were speculating about possibilities. When Grandma, Mama, whatever her name actually is, was first doing her like Daniel dementia stuff. At first you're like, oh man, like what the hell is that? Like, do we have like crazy secret identities here? That set us off into this like. But
do you think he wrote it that way because he knew people were expecting something crazy?
I don't know if that's why he wrote it, but because
that's a really weird way to present the fact that she's getting dementia, don't you think?
Possibly, and that's why we also put kind of put a disclaimer at the time. It's like, well, it might be a red herring also, and then it turned out to be a red herring.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, oh, I hate red herrings, and I still do, and I'm kind of like miffed about the fact that that amounted to essentially nothing.
Yeah, it's just weird because it's just like I don't think it's an unrealistic expectation to have your story lead up to something interesting, right? Like if you know you can have a character study if you want, but you have to write characters that just aren't just tropes. Because to be frank, these are like pretty much as tropey as you can get. Oh, like you said it yourself, is this Fern Gully? Yeah, it was. Like if his motivations are to actually be believed for why he committed suicide, like it can't just be because he's feeling bad. Because if he was just feeling bad, he wouldn't commit suicide by blowing up the bridge the way he did. He ended up believing in the cause, right? So that's a trope in and of it. It's like Avatar. Like it's just kind of lame.
I would argue that her story is just as filled with tropes, but the tropes he uses are just more fun.
I think they're more fun, but he's also like, we're playing with them in way. He's not just presenting the trope. He's like, here's the trope. Here's how crazy it can get if you took it really, really far. Like it's almost
because the tropes he's using are fun. It's like like identities that aren't real. It's not necessarily character tropes, but like storytelling tropes.
Yes, and like and he knows because he's like relating it to fairy tales and all this stuff. Like he knows that this is treaded ground.
Yeah, and like regardless of whether or not you're using tired old tropes, it's always fun to try to figure out, like, is someone who they say they are, is what they're saying real? Who is this person when you don't know who this person is? Like that. Those are fundamental mysteries that are,
it's inherently more interesting. Like
but regardless, those are also tropes.
Yeah.
And what I think Telling Lies feels like to me, as we are talking about it, it's feeling like a fairly mediocre movie chopped up in a bunch of pieces that you're supposed to put together.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it.
Yeah, her story, because it keeps you confused for longer, because it has more fun tropes to use, because they're almost like horror movie tropes too.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly
it
right.
uses a lot of horror movie tropes. That kind of story, like horror movies by nature are, they tend to be more B material. The storytelling and acting may not always be up to the like Oscar level, whatever. They're not particularly prestigious, but they're just fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think her story occupies that space in a way as well. And it works totally because of that.
Yeah,
it works totally really well.
Whereas Telling Lies, like
it's more ambitious because it wants to be more
serious, for lack of a better term. Like
exactly, and then it only goes this far, and it presents it to you jumbled up.
Yeah, like if you presented Telling Lies as a movie, the only way it would work as a movie is if the performances or something else about the movie that's technical and not script or story based was outstanding.
I mean, to the game's credit, I was entertained up till the end.
Yeah, I mean,
but then that was all also under the presumption that we were leading somewhere.
Yeah,
and at the end, once we reached the ending, it's like, oh, it's kind of too bad that ended right there.
Yeah, and then like, I think it's really telling that at least I kept going, Dan, I don't think it's over. I think there's something else we need to do, and that felt exciting until we realized no, there's nothing else to do.
Yeah. Definitely that was part of it too.
Yeah. All of this being said, we're shitting on the game a lot, but in all honesty, like,
well, I think your frustrations, like it's reaching into your core more than it is mine. I still think that like it's a good game. It's worth playing.
Absolutely.
It isn't as fully satisfying an experience as her story is, because her story, wasn't as ambitious and accomplished what it set out to do very well.
Yeah, her story was like a tiny little perfect project.
But yeah, I mean, like if I think I said this at the end of the LP, but I would look at this game and her story as a Monsters University and Monsters Inc. situation. Mm-hmm. In that I personally recommend watching Monsters University before watching Monsters Inc. to anyone who hasn't seen either, because Monsters University, like the major upheaval of the world and it's like the crazier stuff happens in Monsters Inc., which allows Monsters University to like watch Monsters University to have one story that is pretty good and fun. And then Monsters Inc. will actually be the escalation. And that's how I feel about the storytelling between these two games.
Yeah.
Because if you get to play this game first, like if you manage to play this game first, you don't have that base expectation of like, oh shit, how crazy this is gonna get. Like, and I think without that history with her story, you're probably gonna have a better time.
Yeah, and it's just like, I think the difference is that Monsters University is just like, we're just doing a prequel, whereas I think Telling Lies, it's like, I legitimately want to try something ambitious and difficult. And
which it is.
It is difficult.
In a way.
Yeah, and it's like, I completely admire the attempt.
He put together a far more complicated puzzle this time.
Yeah, it's far more complicated. The acting is, for what it is extremely good. Like, it's so hard to do direct camera address acting. Like, it's something that's not commonly done. And it's like, it's like doing a theatrical, like a stage theater performance, except the audience is looking right at your face, right in front of you. That's really hard. And especially when you're not having another person on the stage to react to, for performances that are entirely reactive. They did a really great job. Like
Yeah.
there's some performances that are a bit. Even the kids did it. The little girl, Alba, did an amazing job. Like it's actually remarkable, the directing and the acting that happened. That alone makes the game worth playing, I think, because the performances are genuinely interesting to watch. So I think in that regard it works. I just don't think the performances themselves are enough of a draw to overlook the plot shortcomings, I think. I just want to, kind of bookend all of this by saying I do like this game, and I do think people really should play it.
I don't believe you.
Like,
I think you hate this game.
I mean, I have been thinking about this for like the past 2 weeks, right? Like, it clearly had an effect. And like, I mean, there's many video games that I've just been like, oh, I'm done. I don't fucking care anymore. Like Mass Effect 3. The way I'll say it then is, I don't think my opinion is the majority. So if for some fantastical reason you haven't played the game, don't take my word for it, because I don't think. At least my own personal opinion is definitely not be all end all of anything.
Oh man, there should be a Reading Rainbow like segment for video games where kids tell you about like what game they played and what happens in it.
Oh, it's like the modern Reading Rainbow.
Yeah. I played Fortnite.
That's it.
Then the next kid is like, I played Fortnite.
Okay, so a king is missing. In the solitaire game.
Yeah, the last Black King isn't there. Motherfucker.
What the fuck? Now what?
It's an unwinnable game.
Oh my god.
Well,
symbolism.
It is appropriate that this game would fizzle at the end.